Now look, this all speaks to the nature of racism. What are known as races are social constructs. Racism is about how people are racialized. As a piece in the Times of Israel noted back in 2016, many of today's Palestinians are descendants of the original Jews. They since converted to Christianity or Islam, or both, Christianity then Islam. An article in Science Journal at the turn of the centuries found that as per their genetics, many Arabs and Jews are closely related. It noted that the Y chromosome in Middle Eastern Arabs was almost indistinguishable from that of Jews. Another, more recent study in 2020 found that most of today's Jewish and Arab-speaking populations share a strong genetic link to the ancient Cananites. And yet the Palestinian people are widely presented as subhuman Israeli society. That's because this isn't about race. It isn't about religion. It's about dispossession and colonialism. A people were dispossessed from their land, occupied, and ethnically cleansed. Accordingly, they are racialized as inferior in order to justify the fate imposed upon them, much as the European colonizers racialized black Africans in order to justify enslaving them, subjugating them, stealing their lands, thieving their resources, and murdering huge numbers of them. What we do need to talk about is anti-Palestinian racism, which has only accelerated since Israel's genocide began. Mordechai Brafman shooting two Israelis, thinking they're both Arab, and his Israeli victims believing their attacker was Arab and responding with death to Arabs is part of that. Now, there's been endless talk about anti-Semitism and Jewish safety. Well, anti-Semitism is real. It's an evil, and Jewish people in the diaspora have the right to feel safe. The problem, of course, is that real, actual anti-Semitism, an evil which needs to be fought and is rising, has been conflated with any signs of sympathy with the Palestinian people, any signs of solidarity with the Palestinian people, objections to Palestinians being murdered. A particularly shameless example of this was written by Melanie Phillips in the Jewish Chronicle, headlined, "If you support the Palestinian cause in any form, you're facilitating Jew hate." The subheading then singles out preposterously the governments of Canada, the UK, and Australia as some of the worst offenders. This is actually a helpful contribution for Melanie Phillips because it is simply honest about what Israel's cheerleaders have sought to do. And while pro-Israel cheerleaders have sought to portray the left as the real danger when it comes to anti-Semitism, thanks to our solidarity with the Palestinian people, they not only let the far right off the hook when that's where the real danger of anti-Semitism comes from, the overriding danger comes from, they're often allied to that far right. Think Viktor Orban in Hungary, amongst Israel's staunchest allies, which repeatedly uses anti-Semitic tropes against the opposition. Think, of course, Donald Trump, who has made repeated anti-Semitic comments, and Elon Musk, who not only did what many of us would regard as two very clear-cut Nazi salutes and told the far-right German AfD that its country should move beyond its past guilt, but even endorsed the claim that Jewish communities promote hatred against whites. But note how anti-Palestinian racism and anti-Arab racism has simply been airbrushed from the conversation, underlining how Palestinian and Arab life simply doesn't matter. In October 2023, in Illinois, the United States, the 71-year-old landlord, Joseph M. Kazuba, stabbed to death a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy, Wadia Al-Fayoum. This little boy was stabbed 26 times, and his mother, 32-year-old Hanan Shaheen, was stabbed more than a dozen times. Fortunately, she survived. Investigators determined the victims were, and to quote the sheriff's office at the time, targeted by the suspect due to them being Muslim and the ongoing Middle Eastern conflict involving Hamas and the Israelis. His trial is now only due to start, and the family have also launched a civil suit. In November 2023, three 20-year-old Palestinian college students were shot in the US state of Vermont whilst wearing traditional Palestinian scarves. They were walking near the home of their grandmother and stated they believed the shooting was a hate crime. One of them, Hisham Awatani, was left paralyzed from the waist down. Now, these sorts of horrors are just memory hold. Where is the widespread denunciations of this is indicative of a very real danger, which is being whipped up and incited. Where is the widespread denunciations of this is indicative of a very real danger, which is being whipped up and incited. Again, it's not there. Now, this anti-Palestinian racism often merges with broader anti-Muslim hatred. Indeed, it is today reported that Islamophobic assaults have surged by 73% in 2024 in Britain. In the US, anti-Muslim incidents rose by about 70% in the first half of 2024. US politicians and media outlets, meanwhile, have engaged in outright genocidal rhetoric against Palestinians. In November 2023, a Republican state lawmaker, Michelle Salzman, was asked, "We are at 10,000 dead Palestinians. How many will be enough?" And she replied, "All of them."